I attended the wedding of a junior colleague from work, expecting a joyful celebration. Instead, the bride openly declared that people with low education and financial struggles should cut ties with my husband. Her words were clearly directed at me, looking down on me for dropping out of school. Rather than stopping her, my colleague, the groom, joined in mocking me. That moment was a turning point. I decided then and there to cut them out of my life and prove that a person's worth isn't determined by their education alone. My name is Gwen, and I'm 32 years old. I grew up in an average family, neither rich nor poor. My parents, both college graduates, worked hard to provide for me. However, while my classmates were focused on high school, I was already looking for a job. I was eager to start working as soon as possible. At first, my parents were confused, but they eventually supported my decision, believing that it was my life to live. I started as a factory laborer in my hometown, then moved on to become a painting contractor and later a site supervisor. Eventually, I secured a stable job at a major publicly traded machinery manufacturer, where I've been employed for 7 years. I now work as a service department manager, handling machinery installation, repairs, and maintenance for clients. One morning, as I drove toward the freeway in the company car, my work phone rang. Seeing the company's name on the screen, my mood sank a little. Not again. I pulled over and returned the call. Another client complaint. I apologize. I'll be there right away, I said sincerely, bowing my head out of habit, even though they couldn't see me. It was going to be a long day. By the time I returned to the office at 7 p.m., Theodore, my junior colleague, was already there, chatting happily with a sales employee. I'm back, I announced. Theodore quickly turned away from his conversation, pretending to work on his computer. In our branch, it was just the two of us handling service department tasks, overseen by an area manager. Theodore, got a minute? I asked. What is it? He replied, irritation evident in his voice. There was a complaint from one of your clients this morning. I fixed it, but we're both going there tomorrow to apologize. Why did you leave it unattended for 2 days? I had plans both days, he scoffed. Besides, the CEO over there is always bossing me around. Maybe they should rethink how they treat me. Excuses. Complaints. That's all Theodore ever gave. I have to report this to the area manager, I told him firmly. I had to step in and fix the client's issue. Instead of showing any remorse, Theodore snorted. So, you're ratting on me again? Just because you're jealous of my education? You always exaggerate things in your reports. Jealous? Of him? I had always known Theodore viewed me differently ever since he found out I was a college dropout. Before that, he had been polite, humble, and respectful. But once he learned about my education, his entire attitude shifted. The next day, we went to the client's site to apologize. The company president was already fuming. What are you doing here now? Your job is to fix this, he barked. I was used to aggressive clients in industrial settings, but Theodore was completely out of his element, standing there in silence. After I calmed the client down and discussed future improvements, Theodore muttered a weak, barely audible, I'm sorry. I thought he would be feeling down on the ride back, but I was wrong. Why are field workers so uncivilized? Theodore scoffed. That CEO practically advertises his lack of education with the way he talks. It was embarrassing to witness. The client was angry because of the way you handled the situation, I pointed out. Maybe you should reflect on your work. But my words fell on deaf ears. You just don't get it, Theodore laughed mockingly. I'm only doing this job to gain some mechanical knowledge. I don't plan on sticking around. Typically, employees in our role spent 2 years in the service department before moving to sales. But Theodore had been here for 3 years. Nobody was going to promote someone with his record of complaints. One day, while on a business trip, I was tasked with setting up machinery at a new client site. The test run didn't go as planned, so I had to stay overnight to fix the issue. After work, I went out to find a place to eat near my hotel. As I walked down the street, someone called out to me. Hey, what are you up to? I turned around to see Theodore, standing arm in arm with a woman. Oh, hey, Theodore. Good evening. I greeted them politely. The woman beside him barely acknowledged me, offering a short nod. This is my girlfriend, Selena. She's from around here, Theodore said with a smug grin. I felt like I had seen her somewhere before, but I didn't dwell on it. Theodore invited me to dinner, and I accepted. As we ate, he boasted about his engagement. Selena and I just got engaged. She graduated from the same college as me, and her family is pretty well off. I'm definitely on the fast track to success, he gloated. It was clear why he had invited me. He wanted to show off. Selena remained quiet, barely making eye contact with me. Whenever Theodore spoke, she nodded in agreement, but never said much herself. After dinner, Theodore excused himself to use the restroom. Left alone with Selena, she finally spoke. I've heard quite a bit about you from Theodore, she said coldly, her eyes locking onto mine. I could tell he had been bad-mouthing me. You think your managerial role is a big deal just because you've been at the company a few years longer? She sneered. Could you please stop blocking Theodore's career? I was taken aback. Blocking his career? Certainly. The position of manager was something anyone could achieve through years of service and performance evaluations. However, in reality, I had no authority over Theodore's promotions. Deciding it was pointless to argue, I let it go. When Theodore returned, he avoided making eye contact with me, pretending nothing had happened. As I left, I turned to him. What's your schedule like for tomorrow? I'll be helping out at the branch, he replied casually. But something in my gut told me Theodore's overconfidence would soon catch up to him. Something about the situation felt off, but I didn't say anything at the time, especially since Selena was there. The next day, I arrived at the job site as planned, ready to troubleshoot the test run. But Theodore never showed up. At first, I assumed he was running late, but as the hours passed, an uneasy feeling settled in my gut. Discreetly, I contacted the area manager and asked him to look into Theodore's business trip records. The results were shocking. On the night I had run into Theodore and Selena, they were supposed to be away on an official business trip that required an overnight stay. Yet there they were, enjoying dinner instead. This was a clear case of falsified records. The area manager assured me he would handle it from there, so I stepped back. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over yet. Time passed, and soon enough, the date for Theodore and Selena's wedding was set. Unsurprisingly, I wasn't invited, and to be honest, I was relieved. However, about a week before the ceremony, my area manager approached me with an unexpected request. I need you to attend the wedding in my place, he said. I frowned.
Why?
I wasn't even invited. I was supposed to give the main speech, but I won't be able to make it on time. Just step in for me, give the speech, and once I arrive, you're free to leave, he explained. At first, I declined.
But then I thought about it.
This was an opportunity to make Theodore and Selena regret ever looking down on me. I accepted. On the day of the wedding, I arrived early. As I walked toward the waiting room, I unexpectedly bumped into Theodore and Selena. Their expressions immediately shifted from surprise to annoyance. Theodore sneered. You know, my elite friends and I all have degrees from prestigious universities and work in top-tier companies. I didn't think a dropout like you would fit in, so we didn't invite you. I remained calm. I was asked to speak on behalf of the area manager. Once he arrives, I'll leave. The color drained from their faces. You're trying to embarrass me by having a dropout give a speech? Theodore hissed. If the area manager can't make it, there's no need for a speech.
Leave. Now.
Selena smirked, crossing her arms. Cut ties with my husband, you uneducated poor man. They both laughed mockingly before turning their backs and walking into the waiting room, leaving me standing there, fists clenched. A new emotion welled up inside me, a mixture of rage and determination. My whole body trembled. If they want to sever ties, then so be it. I stayed under the radar, waiting for my moment. Finally, my turn came. I took a deep breath, stepped up to the mic, and faced the crowd. Theodore and Selena sat at the front, glaring at me, silently urging me to leave. I smiled. Congratulations on your wedding, I began. If you thought I'd stick to the usual pleasantries, you're mistaken. A murmur spread through the crowd. Theodore and Selena stiffened. Theodore isn't exactly commendable at his job, but since this is a celebratory occasion, I must use only the highest praises. I turned to Theodore. Top-tier graduate Theodore, you are exceptional at accumulating customer complaints. Your unrepentant and arrogant behavior, always blaming our clients, really showcases your thick skin. The room fell into stunned silence. Stop it now. Selena suddenly stood, her face twisted in anger. You were supposed to cut ties with Theodore. Stop bullying him. Ignoring her, I continued. Oh, and let's not forget that our dear Theodore is quite the trickster. He's been lying about business trips, using company funds to spend time with a certain someone and claiming expenses for it. That's pretty bold, almost like embezzlement. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Theodore shot up from his seat, face red with fury. Hey, cut it out. You're making this up. He stomped toward me. Selena stood beside him, voice shrill. What's your evidence for this? Are you insane? The murmurs in the audience grew louder. The MC looked panicked, stepping forward hesitantly. Perhaps we should. At that moment, the doors to the venue swung open with a loud bang. A hush fell over the room as two men entered, our area manager and the president of the client company. Selena paled the moment she saw the president striding toward their table, his expression unreadable. The man stopped right in front of her. So, he said, his voice dangerously calm. Your claims about wanting to quit your job to marry me, that was a lie? The room went deathly silent. I watched as Selena's face twisted with fear and confusion. Turns out, before meeting Theodore, Selena had been working as a hostess at an upscale club. I had recognized her that night, though it had taken me a while to place where I had seen her before. After some digging, I had reached out to the area manager, who in turn contacted the client president. The truth? Selena had once convinced the president that she was quitting her job to be with him. He had loaned her a significant sum of money to help her start a new life. Then, she disappeared, only to turn up here, planning to marry someone else. I lent you money to quit your job and pay off your debts, the president continued, voice filled with barely restrained anger. And now I find you here, planning to marry someone else? The entire room erupted into whispers. Selena looked like she wanted to sink into the floor. Theodore, still reeling from my speech, now stared at her in shock. And just like that, their perfect, high-status wedding turned into a complete disaster. That night, Theodore's career crumbled. With evidence of his false business trips and expense fraud, he was soon fired.
Selena?
She vanished after the wedding, facing legal troubles from the client president's lawsuit. As for me, I went back to work with my head held high, proving that education isn't the only path to success. And I never heard from Theodore again. Selena stood frozen, unable to come up with a single excuse when faced with the calm yet imposing presence of the client president. The weight of her lies pressed down on her, and for the first time, she had nothing to say. Theodore, still reeling from the earlier revelations, turned to her with wide, disbelieving eyes. What is going on? He demanded, his voice laced with anger and confusion. Selena snapped back, her panic morphing into rage. You act all elite, but you're nothing more than a fraud. You're a criminal, even worse than that dropout. She shot a glare in my direction before continuing, her voice venomous. That dropout is just jealous of me. It's all lies. But before Theodore could argue, the area manager stepped forward, standing firmly between them. His voice was calm, yet authoritative. We have evidence of your actions, Theodore, he stated. This will be reported to headquarters. You are suspended until a final decision is made. Theodore's face drained of color. The weight of reality hit him like a ton of bricks. He looked at me, then at Selena, then at the client president, realizing that no amount of arrogance could save him now. The client president turned his gaze back to Selena, his voice cold and unforgiving. We'll be speaking through lawyers from now on. The once defiant woman broke down in tears, her confident facade shattering in front of the entire wedding hall. The MC, visibly shaken, quickly grabbed the microphone. Due to unforeseen circumstances, today's ceremony is suspended. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, but within moments, the message was clear. The wedding was officially off. Guests were asked to leave, and within minutes, the grand wedding venue emptied out, leaving behind only whispers and shattered reputations. I walked out with the area manager and the client president, the night air feeling cooler and lighter than before. Rumors spread quickly. It turned out Theodore and Selena had planned to officially register their marriage after the ceremony, but now that was completely off the table. Their families, once so eager to boast about their union, were now locked in a bitter feud, blaming each other and fighting over the wedding costs. As for Theodore, his suspension didn't last long, because soon after he was fired for misconduct. Headquarters began calculating the exact amount he had embezzled, preparing to take legal action to ensure he paid every cent back. There was only one unfortunate consequence. My area manager, despite handling the situation well in the end, also received a pay cut for failing to properly supervise his subordinates. Turns out, Theodore had been strategically planning his fraudulent business trips on days when major machinery installations took place, knowing they would be approved without much scrutiny. And Selena? She now faced serious fraud charges from the client president, who was determined to hold her accountable for her sham engagement and financial deception. From what I heard, she would be tied up in court for a long time. As for me, I haven't spoken to Theodore since that day. I don't need to. Some people deserve to be left behind. And I will continue to live my life with my head held high. Please feel free to comment below if you like this. Remember to like and subscribe for more.